I've looked into all of this, and one of the things I hear regularly from people who are like in the know is they change the algorithm all the time.
Yeah.
So what works this week may not work the next. And if your content is good, if it really touches people, somehow it does seem to get out there. The
Yeah.
hard part is we go, oh, this is amazing. This is totally going to go viral. And then you get like 3 views or something. Well, maybe not three, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's so
it's so
relate.
disappointing. You're like, how do people not see this?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Yollab Central. Today, I have Jorie with me. So, Jorie, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about this conversation today?
So I am somebody who I lived with undiagnosed ADHD until the age of 49. And then when I was diagnosed, I found that there were no resources for middle-aged women who had it. And so I created my own thing. And so I started working with women mostly who uh, discovered their ADHD later in life or who came to accept their diagnosis later in life, just helping them to take the shame out of it, helping them to better understand how their brains work.
Mhm.
And but also I love to educate people about ADHD because there's so much confusion and misinformation out there about it. And but I went from being able to not really do much of anything. I was really super depressed by the time I finally got my diagnosis
Uh-huh.
to somebody who I have a successful business. I just launched a podcast. And
Right.
so I want to kind of show that you can do these things even when you think you can't. So
Okay. All right. So before, since you mentioned the misinformation, right? Now I am uninitiated into the field of ADHD and all these. So from my perspective, I'd like to know at what point did you realize that I need to get myself checked? Okay, because I've heard a lot of people just pass around this comment that, oh, it's just me being all ADHD and that kind of stuff. People just pass it around when they're not being attentive or something of that sort. So, at what point did you realize that, yeah, I need to get myself checked up, diagnosed, and it might actually be a serious or real issue?
yeah, that's a great question, actually. The first time I talked to, well, the first time I tried to talk to a doctor about it, I was 19.
Okay.
I just knew I was really struggling to stay focused on things. And I had problems like verbal directions were a struggle for me. Like I couldn't retain the information.
Mhm.
And I'd heard about ADHD, but I'd always heard that it was boys, right? Adolescent boys, and that you could grow out of it. So I'm like, well, I'm clearly not a boy. And every doctor I talked to from 19 on, and it's not like I talked to a ton of them, but I usually got some version of, well, you just have too much on your plate,
Okay.
right? Or you're fine. And I was like, I'm not fine. That's why I'm bringing it up, you
Right.
know? And so the last time that I did before my actual diagnosis, um, I had my son was about 9 months old and I knew what he was going to say before he even said it, which was, well, you got a kid now. Right. And so I thought, okay, I guess I just don't adult well. And that's really how I was in my late 30s at that point. And when I got into my 40s, I got really depressed because I kept looking at my life and comparing myself to people around me and going, is this really all I'm capable of? I just always thought I would do so much more with my life.
That's right.
And I was really down on myself. And then COVID hit.
Mhm.
And like a lot of women with undiagnosed ADHD, we were suddenly in a world where all of our worlds were in one place and we
That's right.
couldn't really fake it till we make it anymore.
Hmm.
And the kind of the last my husband got on TikTok, which I had been avoiding, and then I ended up on it, and I immediately ended up in ADHD TikTok, and it wasn't the obvious signs of ADHD, like the forgetfulness and things like that. It was that out of sight, out of mind is part of
Right.
ADHD. That includes people, and
Uh-huh.
that was a big aha for me. I was
Okay.
like, well, that would definitely explain some stuff.
Hmm.
um, Anecdotal communication. So, for example, you're talking with a friend and they're venting about what their spouse did, and you've been through something similar with your spouse. So you try to tell them what you went through because you're trying to connect with them, but
Uh-huh.
they think you've just taken over the conversation, things like that. So I've communicated that way my entire life. And I was like, wow, okay. So I thought I was connecting and people thought I was a jerk. Good to know at the age of 50. So But the final thing was a friend of mine, she and I and one other woman are in a mastermind group. And I don't know what I did, but I said, oh, sorry, I think I might have ADHD, kind of half joking. And my friend said, actually, I think you do. And I think it's why you struggle so much. And I think you're always going to flounder until you get this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And which it was the word flounder that really hit me hard because that's what it felt like my career wise. It was just floundering from one thing to another thing and I couldn't make anything stick. But it was COVID, so you couldn't get in to see anybody in person. So I had to do it through an online thing, but it got the ball rolling. And it was so validating to get that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, there was still that part of me saying, but what if they're wrong? What if I really am just lazy and need to get my
Yeah,
act together? But that was just the narrative I had been telling myself all these
that's
years
right.
was you're just lazy, you just need to try harder.
Mm-hmm.
And but I also had the sense of relief afterwards of, oh, I can finally stop taking all these personal development courses that were clearly not designed for my brain.
Right.
And so I was able to start tailoring things a little bit more to how my brain works versus everybody else's.
Okay.
Sorry, that
Now,
was a very long answer to your question.
no, that's
Sorry.
actually a very useful answer, to be very frank, because for me, somebody who does not know, this is quite informative to understand what people actually go through when somebody is struggling with ADHD. And for a person who's got undiagnosed ADHD or just no just might think that they have it but they're just being lazy, they have to draw the line, right? To be very frank, as a person as well, you have to know that no, this is not a medical condition, this is just me being lazy. Or are you tipping the border and going to the point where you need a doctor to and have to reach out to get help? So
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And there was so much more about ADHD that I didn't even know at that point
Mhm.
until after I was diagnosed. I was like, wait, that's ADHD? Wait, that's ADHD? It was like astounding to me. I,
Right.
it literally impacts every single area of your life. But seeing how that shows up for each person, because it's a spectrum, right?
That's right.
So for some people, it's very mild and they have put together some really great coping techniques that have helped them get through. For
Right.
other people, it can be really severe. I'm kind
Right.
of in the middle.
Mhm.
It's very hereditary. So both my kids have it.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So
All right. Now, since you brought TikTok into the picture, just wanted to understand what role did TikTok actually have in your trying to discover that, okay, this might be a problem? Because I keep getting this feedback. Yeah, TikTok is just full of all kinds of content. You might not get any help out of it unless you're following the right kind of people. And it's just that. Uh, you might get into doom scrolling or something of that sort, but where did it click? How did the algorithm actually help you, if it did or did not?
it was kind of frightening how quickly it figured out who I was in terms of what I would be interested in. I was like, this is a little scary. I mean, I was almost immediately in ADHD TikTok. And
Okay.
I am a firm believer of you can't just take what anybody says online at face
Mhm.
value. You really need to
Yeah,
like look into it.
that's right.
Um, but there were so many things that were absolutely hitting on what I struggled with most. And so I started looking more into those things. And I'm like, this has got to be what this is. But, I'd also been like, but you tried to talk to doctors about it. They said you were fine.
Yeah.
And, and so, or I would like look at my friends and go, well, they do this and they don't have ADHD, only to find out later they also had undiagnosed ADHD.
Okay.
So, we tend to find our own people,
Yeah.
but it I do encourage people like when you see things on TikTok or really anything online, do research on it because there's a whole lot of buoy out there.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, like I said, it was not the obvious signs of ADHD that really caught my attention. It was those
Yeah.
things that I hadn't heard about. Emotional dysregulation is also a big part of ADHD, and yet it's not.
Hmm.
It had never been, most people don't associate the two.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Now, coming to your journey, right, from COVID to today, right, you've grown your own business, you got a podcast, you're doing so many other things rather than just doing them at random before, right? You're now doing it in with a little more purpose, with a little more structure, if I would call that. So, how's
Hmm.
that journey been? If there's some tips you can share with everybody.
Yes. So when I first was diagnosed, I naively thought, oh, now that I know what this is, I can totally handle this on my own. I don't need a therapist. I don't need a coach. I don't need medication, blah, blah, blah. And I could not. And the same friend who told me she thought I had ADHD, she reached out. And she also, I don't know if I mentioned this, she also had late diagnosed
Okay.
ADHD. So she saw what was happening with me. She reached out a few months later after my diagnosis. She's like, you haven't started med yet, have you? I was like, wow, is it that obvious? And she's like, a little bit. And so I was very nervous about it because you hear all these, stories or whatever. And so I talked to a prescriber about it. We talked about what was going on. And so I did end up starting medication. And that was a huge game changer for me.
Okay.
And that was, I will tell you, it doesn't matter whether you do medication or not. That is a super personal choice. And I never tell people you should absolutely do it.
Hmm.
But at some point when you are late diagnosed, you will go through a grieving process
Right.
because it's very much how was I missed?
Hmm.
Right? Like to me
Yes,
now,
that's
all
right.
the signs were so obvious, how different things may have turned out, how much more
Yeah.
I might have been able to accomplish.
Uh-huh.
So be prepared for that because it wasn't until I started the medication because then I got to see what everyone else was working with naturally.
Hmm.
And I went, oh my gosh, I have been living with my life with my hands tied behind my back and not even
Right.
realizing it.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm also a firm believer that pills don't teach skills.
That's right.
So I then also I really struggled to find coaching and therapy that was specific to ADHD because again, it was mostly geared towards boys. So I had to kind of piecemeal things together myself.
Hmm.
But I was able the one good thing about ADHD is we have hyperfocus,
Uh-huh.
which is a strange thing when you struggle with focus, but it's a self-regulation issue. We can't regulate always where our attention goes.
Oh.
So hyperfocus is actually amazing when you learn how to work it, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I just did the deep dive on all things ADHD, and I really just learned how my brain worked, how ADHD was showing up for me, and I started to put things in place to put guardrails around the things that I struggle with most. So out of
Okay.
sight, out of mind is by far my biggest struggle. So like I have a list of people, for example,
Okay.
to reach out to who I will completely forget they exist if they're not in front of me on the regular, but they're people that mean something to me. And I've lost friendships because of things like that.
Okay.
Um, I'm still in a mastermind. I am a big believer in external accountability. When you have ADHD, to me, it's a non-negotiable
Hmm.
because and it should be with somebody that you have a lot of respect for, that you
Okay.
don't want to look bad in front of, so you're going to do the things. But I also really learned how to give myself grace. I used to be, and I'm not saying I'm not that I'm completely free of this yet, but I
Hmm.
used to be really hard on myself.
Okay.
We are our own worst bullies. And I really learned like I'm doing the best I can with what I have in this moment.
Yeah.
And some days everything is on and I'm knocking it out of the park. And other days I am really struggling with my energy. I'm really
Yeah.
struggling to stay focused.
Hmm.
And so if you are somebody who maybe you've just been diagnosed or you're thinking about it, just know that that's kind of just the starting point. And it is the best starting point because while it's a lot of work to figure out how your brain works, what I tell people is while the rest of the world was born with a PC brain, we were born with Macs. But having the Mac brain isn't the problem. The problem is that we were given the PC manual to work with.
All right.
And so like every personal development course you've ever taken was not designed thinking about time blindness, for example.
Yeah.
And so when you can really start to see, oh, this is where my ADHD shows up. Oh, this is what's going on here.
Hmm.
It's very freeing because then you can do something about it.
Right.
And so, yeah, there are some days where I would do anything to have somebody else's brain, but they're much less often than they used to be.
Right. Okay. Now, since you talked about having this some other person's brain, right? And the grieving process, the part where you feel like how life would have been different. Uh, since you're living that life right now, kind of with medication and therapy, right? Uh, if you could share one guardrail, as you mentioned, right? You've got so many guardrails. If you could share one that others with ADHD could just pick up on, something that applies to all of them.
I am a firm believer that if you have ADHD, all of your clocks need to be analog clocks, no digital,
Okay.
because digital clocks show us one moment in time. And then we have to do math. And it's not that we can't do math, but it's one more step. And you want to try and streamline
Uh-huh.
and reduce the mental load. So, for example, I have a visual timer. So now I can visually
Okay.
see this is how much time I have left.
Right.
And but I also learned I have to have it across the room when I use it, because sometimes I'll turn it off and I'll go right back to it. Let me just finish this last thing. And then 2 hours
Yeah.
have passed again. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would highly recommend is, so ADHD energy for people with ADHD is very different because it takes a lot more to get us moving, right?
Yeah.
We are low on dopamine, and dopamine is the thing that gets you to do the thing. So if you don't have that, you have to gamify things, you have to you have to find ways to make that work. But when you can better understand how your energy works, so like mine is best in the morning. I've woken up, I've taken my medication. So that is when I tend to do the things that need more brain power.
Yeah.
Whereas in the afternoon, like I have a thing of time that where I don't see clients, I don't work, I like go, I'll take a nap or meditate or do something so I can rest. And then I get a
Yeah.
second win later.
Mm-hmm.
But learning how to take breaks,
Mm-hmm.
which terrifies people with ADHD, because if I stop, I might not go back. Right. It's like I'm motivated now. And because you're so used to it being this fleeting thing,
Mm-hmm.
like I just need to get as much done now as I can. But the problem is that the longer you work without breaks, the worse the work is that you're doing. So if it's something for work, you're going to make more
Yeah.
mistakes. It's not going to be as good a quality. But I have, I'll share my sort of framework for taking breaks, which is number one, don't wait too long to take your first break. When I talk to clients and I say, well, how long do you typically wait before you take a break? And they're like, I don't know, a few hours. I'm like, okay. So that's number one. I'm like, okay, so during those 3 hours, we'll say three, did you nourish yourself?
Mm-hmm.
No. Did you hydrate? No. Did you get movement? No. How long had you been holding your bladder? Geez, how did you know that? Because I've lived it, right?
Yeah.
So don't wait too long. I usually say 30 minutes to an hour max.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want to time your break because you will forget you're on a break, or you'll just get distracted and then you'll take a
Yeah.
longer break than you want to. The other thing is you want to know exactly what you are doing when you come back. So if you're working at your desk and you're working on a report, don't just say, well, I'll keep working on the report. You have to be really specific because our brains don't like vagueness. If
Mm-hmm.
there's vagueness in any instructions or anything, we're like, nope, not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing is no sitting, at least not on anything comfortable, because that will be it. You won't get back up. So you're going to sit down on a comfy couch, you start doom scrolling on your phone, and it's game over. So just, if you want to sit down on a fairly uncomfortable dining room chair to eat, fine. You're nourishing yourself. Make sure you drink some water. But when I have implemented those things, I am far more likely to return from a break
Uh-huh.
than if
Yeah.
I did not do those things.
Okay, now since there's this part of the conversation which mentioned dopamine, right? Now there's a lot of discussion about dopamine and doom scrolling because they both come together. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you tend to get into doom scrolling just because you're getting those mini dopamine hits, right? And for somebody with ADHD or not with ADHD, because I think everybody struggles with doom scrolling these days. So yeah, you mentioned, right? You sit on an uncomfortable chair to get out of it, but then what are some steps that people could take to get out of that?
So doom scrolling is so the first thing I would say is, and I'll say this for anybody, but definitely if you have ADHD, don't get on your phone first thing because it sets false dopamine levels that you will be
Yeah,
chasing the rest of the day
that's right.
and you will never catch them. So that's the first thing. There are lots of really good apps out there that can limit how much time you spend. You can do it for, for specific apps or a specific amount of time on your phone or whatever. I just saw one, and I don't know that much about it, but it seemed interesting to me. I think it was called the block, where you like tap your phone and you can set it so that it will literally take off temporarily like all your social media
Okay.
for however long you say. So then you can just use your phone as your phone, or you can do it where it will only keep certain things on your phone. But I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea too, because
Mhm.
it's the social media. It's just such an easy thing to go on and just kind of flip through. And
That's true.
um, the other thing that I know can help reduce that is, and now I don't know for Android, but on iPhones, there's a setting where, like for me, if I hit my side button 3 times, it will turn my screen black and white.
Okay.
And by doing that, there's not the same draw to look at your phone.
Mhm.
And so that's also been really helpful. Unfortunately, like unless you put some pretty significant things, an app that I have used that I really liked was called Opal. That was, you could set like how serious are you about not wanting to get on this app.
Yeah.
So, some of them is like, well, if I click off, then you can let me back in. Then the next one was, okay, well, you can let me back in, but then it's only for a short period of time. And then if you try to go back in again, it takes longer for the app to open. And then the last one was, you can't get into this until the time you allotted to be off is done. There's no way around it. So that one was very effective for me because I needed to pull out the big guns on that one.
Uh-huh.
Um, but don't think that discipline is going to work for it. Dopamine is very addictive in a lot of ways, and like you said, it's not just people with ADHD that are dealing with the doom scrolling issues. It's a lot of people. So anything you can do that can just, even if it's like when you're working, have your phone in the other room. Just little things like that can make a huge difference where you're just not thinking about it. I have my phone on do not disturb most of the time, so I don't have the pings and the bings and all that stuff going off. I turn off all my notifications except for texts.
Mhm.
Um, because otherwise I would be constantly looking at my phone. If every time I got an email, for example, oh my God, that would make me nuts. So
Yeah.
any little thing that you can do like that, they all add up. You can also, if you live with someone, if you have, people around, maybe you guys can kind of do it as like a challenge, even like
Right.
the person to use their phone the least gets a reward or
Right.
something like that. But I think just as society in general, we need to get off our phones. Like it's really kind of frightening how addicted we are to them.
Yeah, actually, what I've been doing is I've set the generic app timer you have in the wellness section. At least in iPhone there is, and if I remember it was there in Android as well. So yeah, I've been using that especially on Instagram. I have that 1 hour timer that I don't use the same app for more than an hour through the day. At some point, I was not hitting it for quite a long time. I think I went 2 to 3 months where I was not hitting that timer for quite some time. So yeah, I was
Oh
happy
yeah.
about it, but now I'm back to just take me on a little more. But then,
Yeah, Instagram's one for me too. I really tend to be like, what's going on Instagram? Because a lot of my business is online too.
yeah,
So
that's
that
true.
doesn't help, right? So I have stuff on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and
Yeah,
Substack. And so I really have to be conscious about when I go on and just go on to do the business stuff.
that's right.
And then, set a timer to be on, like for personal things, whatever, for a certain amount of time. I don't always do that. Um, but I started to do things like coloring, like literally I bought a coloring book and crayons. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm going to color instead of be on my phone. I want to do something creative. I know it's kind of like childish, but whatever. And it's been really effective. So I'm like, all right, this works. This is great. So I
Yeah,
think if you can find because I thought, what do we do before phones? Like we used to be out doing things and
that's
now
right.
we're not.
Yeah.
And so that was what I did. That was like something I could do now. We still had some stuff with my kids. My
Uh-huh.
kids are older now, but we still have crayons and stuff in the house. And so that's what I started doing.
Mhm. Now, okay, now from this is from the consumption perspective. Now, since we got business, now let's talk about content that can actually get people hitting that dopamine rush. If you want to do that, setting that dark I don't know if you want to call it a dark practice, but that's how content works these days, right? So yeah, if you since you
It's the
want
dark arts.
yeah, so if you want people to watch your content, so you have to be giving them the hook and something of that sort. So what are the kind of hooks that you are using?
So for a long time, I was doing reels where I literally just stood in my kitchen
Okay.
and I would start off asking a question. Do you do this? Or have you ever noticed this?
Mm-hmm.
And my tagline was always, my name is Jorie Houlihan. I'm your guide for the dopamine deprived. And today we're talking about ADHD and then whatever that topic was. But I
Right.
would always try to ask a question to make them think, oh yeah, I've been through this, or, that kind of thing. And those have been pretty successful. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't claim to know anything about the algorithm in terms of I've had videos that have gone viral. I have no idea why. They just do. And I'm like, great, this is wonderful. Facebook, I I grew much faster on Facebook than I did Instagram. Instagram's kind of the long slog. But then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, a couple years ago, all of a sudden I went from having like 5,000 to now I have almost 25,000 followers on Instagram. So
Oh.
um I think when you're putting things out that people want to see, I
Mm-hmm.
do really like asking questions first whenever
Right.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm mostly just putting clips from the podcast because I just launched a podcast. So those are kind of the things I'm putting out
Yeah.
now. Um, and I'm playing around with like the faceless reels a little bit, which I don't know if I'll keep doing those or not.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying that for the first time this week, but um, I think, I've looked into all of this, and one of the things I hear regularly from people who are like in the know is they change the algorithm all the time.
Yeah.
So what works this week may not work the next. And if your content is good, if it really touches people, somehow it does seem to get out there. The
Yeah.
hard part is we go, oh, this is amazing. This is totally going to go viral. And then you get like 3 views or something. Well, maybe not three, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
so
so
relate.
disappointing. You're like, how do people not see this? But the other thing that I'm going to start trying to do is the trial reels. I had not tried that yet,
Uh-huh.
but the trial reels only go to people who are not currently followers.
Yeah.
And so I thought this could be
After
a
24
good way
hours.
to introduce people to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't go on your little squares thing, and then if it's good, then you can release it to everybody.
Mhm.
So I think I'm going to try that too because I've had a few people in my life who've tried those and they said it was really pretty effective for them.
Okay. So let's just talk about what you've been doing. How have you been helping people? So because yeah,
Mhm.
that I've not asked you that yet.
So I do private coaching first, and so the private coaching is nice because we can really get into the minutia of their stuff, right? We're
Yeah.
not talking in generalities. We're looking at them specifically.
Right.
So the whole first part of working with me is
Mm-hmm.
getting you more self-aware because for
Uh-huh.
people whose brains want to pay attention to everything, we are spectacularly unself-aware. And so when you can start to see where your ADHD is showing up and that's ADHD, like all or nothing thinking, people are like, oh, I'm such a perfectionist. I'm like, yeah, that comes from all or nothing thinking, I think. And that's part of ADHD too. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. And then kind of looking at not just what their challenges are, but also what their strengths are.
Right.
Because we do have them. It's just that usually by the time people get to me, they're feeling so down about themselves, they don't see it yet. But helping them to see where their strengths are is, I think, also really important. I also have been doing some group coaching, which has been really nice. And I have a membership that is going to be, I think, being retired, and then I'm going to be starting something else in the spring because I have a lot of like digital courses that people can do. So I'm going to start kind of going down that road more. I like doing group coaching just because I can help more people in a short period of time. And So I think I'm going to be focusing more on that. And then, of course, the podcast. So the podcast is a combination of just solo ones with me where I talk about some aspect of ADHD and also interviews with
Mhm.
people who are, who somehow work within that community. And then starting in the new year, um, the woman who got me to get assessed, she was my first interview actually. She and I are going to do like kind of a panel of two, is I think what we're literally calling it, because her ADHD and mine look very different. And so we thought it would be a really good way to show people that, like, how it shows up for me does not mean it's how it's going to show up for you. And so that people can kind of see, like, it is a spectrum. And I think it will help people relate better to a lot of what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we're just, the podcast is brand new and it's been definitely like a big part of my life for the last few months trying to get that going. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten feedback going, oh my gosh, I feel seen for the first time ever, things like that, which makes me always feel really good. I used to do webinars. I may go back to doing those too. Where like, I would I had two main ones that I did, and those were just kind of great for introducing myself to people and people learning that I actually do know what I'm talking about and wanting to be a part of my community. So,
All right. Okay, Jorie, thank you so much for this episode. It's just that I did not know a lot of things about ADHD, so thank you for bringing me in the know. Hopefully, there are a lot of people in my audience as well who do not know, and probably there is somebody out there who probably needs a little help. So might as well, we
mm-hmm.
might go somewhere and get the help that they need. Now, before we close, how can people get in touch with you, and how can they know more about you?
Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is joriehoulihan.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find me, like I said, on Instagram, Facebook. Just look up Jorie Houlihan, and it's pretty easy to find me. The podcast, if you're looking for me on the podcast, I would put in Jorie Houlihan and then ADHD, just because I will show up faster, because there's a lot of ADHD content out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. But Jorie Houlihan is probably the most central place to find me.
All right. Thank you so much, Jory, for this episode. Thanking you once again is just like because I like to thank people a lot. But yeah, to the audience who's been watching and listening, thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. The comment section is open for questions, suggestions, perspectives, and anything else you want to talk about. And yeah, if you've not subscribed yet, do follow us on YouTube and wherever else you're listening. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much, Jory.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.